Dear Jason, there was this friend of mine, Jonah, that lived down in Columbus when I lived down there. Me and Jonah were pretty close. We both drank a lot, and we didn't think fighting was so bad. So we fought, and we drank, and we didn't care too much for girls or sports or working, although we both had girlfriends and we both had jobs. Can you hand me that microphone?
When I moved up here to Cleveland, I left Jonah behind. I'm sure he did things every day, just like I did, ... Working and eating and shaving, and all that, but we did those things hundreds of miles away from each other.
Well, time went by and we would talk, but as I said, I left Jonah down there and he let me go. So it never went far beyond highs and such. So I found out today that something happened to Jonah.
Apparently, he was shaving in the shower, same as I do. My wife is always complaining that I take too long. She thinks I'm masturbating in there, but I'm shaving. So there he was shaving, and it seems that while he was standing there, the mirror that was hanging on the wall of the shower from a little hook on a suction cup, it slipped down the wall. Not all the way down to the tub, just about 6 inches. Now that may not sound too bad, but after you hear the rest of the story, you wish it had slipped all the way to the center of the earth, releasing all the sulfur and wickedness that's down there, because old Jonah, my man Jonah, he followed that mirror down those 6 inches, and there he stayed. When he got out of the tub, he was twisted up like a question mark, all hunched over like a Russian peasant. His girlfriend, Moira, when she saw him, she screamed like a siren, because it turns out she was superficial. Now, Jesus Christ, imagine that. I've known Jonah a long time, and I guess it's because that, well, I never saw him as a good-looking guy. But in hindsight, I can see that he was really quite striking. And when Moira saw him all hunched over like Quasimodo, she broke out of the house at a dead run, and didn't stop until she got to Jordan's house, which is fine because Jonah and I knew that Moira and Jordan had, well, that's another story.
So suddenly, there's my friend of friends, right? We all have the closest friend. So there's my friend of friends, Brent, bent and disfigured and now ran out on, and still he doesn't call me. I can see why. When I allow my mind to loose itself from its moorings, but I can't agree with it. Some of the muck and mud he had to wade through could have been avoided, but that's neither here nor there. I see what saying that means now. Jonah still went to work that day. He drove into the offices of the downtown design agency he got a position with, and no one saw him for almost the whole morning. His back was so hunched over that he passed just out of sight below the sight line of the cubicle walls that made up the wide working area of the firm. He sat at his desk and looked at pictures of he and Moira in happier days. He looked at pictures of Butterfly and me, and him and Moira all sitting on the grass in a topiary garden behind the library. Pictures of us rolling on ecstasy. Pictures of us with black eyes and bloody noses, smiling as camera holding bottles of beer.
Well, one of his coworkers came by his cubicle and looked over his long, distorted shoulder, and with a sharp intake of breath, screamed bloody murder at the top of her lungs. Jonah didn't hear it. He just saw the pretty blonde girl's mouth. Her name is Rachel, making a big black O on her face. Jonah couldn't hear anything. He just sat quietly, waiting for security.
Okay, where was I? So, I'm glad that I'm writing about Jonah. Now, at work today, I stood at a long table I work at. While my hands were busy, I thought about how Jonah had taught me real things, about people I only acted like I knew anything about. I used to act very well informed about Pablo Picasso and Marcel Duchamp and the Hudson River School and all kinds of people, but really, I didn't understand any of it. Jonah understood all of it. He spent so much time making and reading about and studying and talking about art that, if I'm honest, I fell in love a little bit with Jonah. And I had something for him. I knew all about Sherlock Holmes and Ernest Hemingway and J.D. Salinger, and some others like David Foster Wallace, who I hate but I know about. and JT Leroy, and all manner of people that use initials instead of first names. So we traded, Jonah and me. We didn't do anything like, who was that guy with the big nose, Cyrano, or whatever. We didn't hope to gain anything by learning from the other. We just felt so much more comfortable sharing things. And the more excited I got about Camille Pissarro, the more interested he became in J.G. Ballard. More initials instead of first names. And as an aside, spelling was never very important, but pronunciation was. We would argue for hours over it. Well, the argument isn't going to translate well into type.
So there he was, sitting at his desk, Rachel's mouth a terrible O just behind him, everything drowned out by the thrumming and humming in his head. And he decided to kill himself. I'm a little troubled by this, because even his thinking of it, I should have known somehow. I should have felt it. Now, maybe I did. There were so many times last year that I would just be standing in a white hallway with the fluorescent lights buzzing and popping overhead, think, man, these corduroys are full of static electricity. And reflected in those white walls, I'd see Jonah's pleading face. But I thought it was just a broken heart, because it's not just a sexual love that can break your heart. Oh, you know that.
The security guard that approached him was Tyler, the security guard. We'd actually had a couple of beers with Tyler a few times. There's this bar just north of downtown called the Char Bar. It was open after hours, and sometimes I'd meet Jonah there after work. I worked so many different places downtown. I don't even want to get into that. Okay, where was I?
So Tyler saw that there was something going on with Jonah that was heavy enough to screw him up tight like a corkscrew. And he didn't want to snap right there in front of all those suckers that worked at the firm. So he helped Jonah to his feet, and they walked together to the elevator. As they walked, a chorus of screams rose like a watery wave and crashed against the metal elevator doors. When the doors opened, Barry, the general manager, I don't capitalize trivial titles, and I decide if they are trivial, was standing bolt straight, upright, and angular, and weak and sad all at the same time, and he dropped his briefcase and just stood there, staring at Jonah. Then he threw up all over himself. It wasn't a strong gush that shot out of his mouth, it was just like a slow, thick pour out over his bottom lip that sagged on the front of his suit and onto his shoes. Man, I feel like I was there, you know?
So Jonah wasn't moving. And if it hadn't been for Tyler leading him away, Jonah would have still been sitting in his seat, you know? And Tyler wasn't getting on that elevator. Not with that mess. Both the man and the vomit mess. So they all let the door close. And the elevator rolled up. And after a minute, Tyler reached out and hit the button again. And Jonah stared at his reflection in the big metal doors and watched his face twist like he was sucking on a lemon, and he knew this was the end. With a ding, the elevator doors opened again. Barry wasn't on the elevator anymore, but there was a simmering pool of filth where he stood. Tyler led Jonah on, pressed the button for the lobby, and the doors closed, or so I've heard. And that's all anybody's done is heard, because when the elevator doors opened again, Jonah wasn't in there. Neither was Tyler. But what was there was an enormous beast. A bull, deep red, like bloody lips, with a human head on its knotted neck. And the eyes in its head were dead eyes, staring evil hate out into the world. There were seething syringes sticking out of its haunches, squeezing black tar in and out over and over. And there were tattered clothes, brassieres, boxer shorts, pants, and shirts clinging to its hooves. And the hooves themselves were gnarled and cracked. And then the red human-headed bull swallowed the building whole. Witnesses say that it disappeared with a faint pop and a wisp of smoke that looked like a bow tie. And all that was left at the bottom of the smoking crater was poor, sad, pitiful Jonah, swaying from side to side.
He's asleep on my couch right now. Please send instructions. Thoughtfully yours, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.